What's going on, everyone? In today's video, we're going to be talking about defoliating your cannabis plants in the flower stage. Key things to keep an eye out for, and a couple little reminders here to make sure that you guys are keeping up on your plants. A couple tips and tricks to help your plants progress well through the flower stage. I just did a defoliation day yesterday, so without further ado, let's get right into the video. So your plants have been lollipopped and sufficiently put into large enough pots to sustain the root growth, and also are flipped into the 12 on, 12 off light cycle. However, there are a couple of things to keep an eye out for your flowering plants when it comes to training. In the beginning, you have a lot more room to do a lot more training in the beginning. Low stress training, tying up your plants, getting those things taken care of in the first 2 weeks of your flower stage, which is the stretch in most cases. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer, sometimes it can be a little bit shorter. But today we're going to be covering the time after the 2 weeks when the buds start to develop, what kind of defoliation you can do to your plants, and how often. These are very important things to remember, especially if you're a first-time grower. It can be very complicated to figure out exactly what you can get away with when it comes to removing things from your cannabis plants. A big thing when it comes to bud growth to remember is that for a bud to grow, it has to be getting hit by light. It can grow a little bit, but it will be underdeveloped if it's not being hit directly by light. So if you see a bud site being covered by a fan leaf or any other type of leaf that has I would say over an inch long stem would be safe to remove. A lot of those leaves aren't necessary, especially if they're shadowing other potential growth. These could be large inward facing fan leaves, or they can also be outward facing if your plant is a considerable bush and has a lot of tops. This can become an issue. Any overbearing fan leaves are okay to take off at any time. We're going to talk about frequency of heavy defoliation and also how much you should be taking off when you do a defoliation session. So if you've been growing cannabis plants for any length of time, you know pretty much everything you do to that plant, other than watering and feeding, is going to cause it some sort of stress. This is categorized in between low stress and high stress, and low stress is something that doesn't stress the plant out so much. This includes defoliation and light training, whereas the high stress training includes things like topping and just other things of that nature. Things that are going to cause a high amount of stress and a large recovery time. Lollipopping is also one of these things. Defoliation falls under the low stress category, and low stress training is okay throughout the flower stage as long as you are doing the correct light stress training. After the stretch, defoliation is okay, but it is also important to keep in mind how often you are doing the defoliation, as you need to make sure your plant is getting a proper recovery period to make sure you are not stunting its growth. I found that it is best to go into a flower garden, take off at least one handful or at most 1.5 handfuls of fan leaves or leaves that you find to be unnecessary to the growth of the buds of the plants, because the buds can be underdeveloped if they are shadowed and they can die potentially without enough light. It is also important to go underneath the canopy and make sure that all of your plants have dead leaves or wilting leaves removed. Wilting leaves can retain their color for some time, but if they fall limp and they start shriveling, this is a key indicator that that leaf has lost connection to the plant itself and has started dying on its own. This is simply because it does not have enough light or is not being given enough nutrients to sustain itself. But if it is at the bottom of the canopy, this is nothing to worry about. This is simply the plant managing itself and giving the essential parts of the plant more of the essential nutrients. I found after a defoliation period, if you remove leaves at most every other day, which means you're removing leaves one day, skipping a day, and then removing leaves the next day, you should see very little to no slow of the growth of the bud sites themselves or the plant in general. 1 day is a pretty long grow period for a cannabis plant. They can deal with a high amount of stress, and they don't need to be babied so much as other plants might need to, because they are a weed. So they recover fast, and their goal is to grow. So you should not see any super big problems if you go every other day taking leaves off of a plant, and then every time you see dead leaves, taking those off as well. And even taking care of some of the lower growth that you see as underdeveloped or spacey buds, and you'd rather have that energy go to the top. These are also things that can be removed during a defoliation period to make sure that your plant is growing the healthiest that it possibly can. I hope this video helped you, and if you liked it, please hit the like button, and consider hitting the subscribe button if you like my content, and I will see you on Monday. Thank you very much.